Hey everybody, Epic Eddie here, and we're here for another Real Talk Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about censorship, we're getting into nudity, we're getting into profanity, we're getting into all the good stuff. But before we get started, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that like button if you get anything out of this, and also make sure you guys subscribe. That obviously helps me out so I can continue to do more of these shows, but also, it lets you know when all of my videos are coming out. And so I appreciate all the love already, appreciate it from you guys, and make sure you're sharing. Hopefully some people can get something out of this, especially if you did too. So that being said, you guys know it, but it can't be Real Talk Tuesday if we don't have any tequila. So today is actually a special tequila. This was actually given to me by one of my very, very good friends, Jared. He actually works at the Paradise Cantina, also at the brewery, Able Baker. He works at Able Baker Brewery too. So make sure you go show him some love if you're ever in Las Vegas. Great guy. He'll bust your chops, but he's a sweetheart, man. He actually got me this one. So this is the Herradura Tequila. I probably pronounced it wrong, but whatever. This one actually is a special one though. So let me show you guys first. So this one is actually, it's like crazy distilled. So it looks like a silver, but it's actually Anejo. And it messes with me because you go to drink it and you're expecting a silver or a blanco, and it's definitely Anejo. But it's really smooth. It's really nice. He had me try a bit of it beforehand when I had, some of the boys over. And we were supposed to only just have a little bit, just so I could taste it first. And we almost damn near drank the whole thing. So I was like, wait, save some. So saved a little bit so I can have it for today. So again, shout out to Jared. Let's get this bad boy open. Might as well do the rest. Tequila time. It's so smooth. It's nuts. Hold on, I need some more. All right, so let's get into it. So today, censorship. Oh man, this is going to be a real interesting one because this is something that I have always talked about all the time, and I have my own views on it. We can see if you all agree with me too. But censorship, I think, in essence, is needed, to kind of guide people, or at least to know to allow people to not be exposed to certain things unconsensually. I mean, you can't just have porn blasting on the general TV every now and again because you do have families, you do have kids, and some people don't consent to those things. And so you can have the option of watching it on your own, but there has to be some guidelines, of course. But some of the things that we've decided as far as censorship as a society is just interesting to me. I'll put it that way. So I'll start off with nudity. It's a very interesting one to me because here's the thing. I was watching The Walking Dead not too long ago, and it's interesting how we accept violence, but we don't accept nudity, especially because all of us are born naked. Nudity is a very natural thing. But also, granted, if anybody knows me, I'm a big advocate of nudity. I think people should be more naked more often and just have the freedom to do so. But that also being said, it's just interesting that I can literally watch on cable TV a man get his face eaten off like gruesomely, but we can't see a nipple. We can't throw a nipple out every now and again. And again, not just randomly. It needs to make sense for the story. But when people are alone in a apocalyptic situation and they're together and they're just get into some things, two of them, if a nipple slips out, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be all right. But it's just so interesting how open we try to be or seem or portray ourselves as a society here in the States, but we often come off very prudish. We really are prudish as a society. A guy's nipple, freaking what's his name that plays Thor? Oh Jesus, Chris. I'm gonna beat myself up, but Chris I call him Chris. That's my homie. So my boy Chris that plays Thor. Apparently, there was times during his Marvel stint that they just wanted him to take his shirt off for no reason. And granted, he has a great body. If I had his body, I wouldn't even own shirts. Like I would just be shirtless all the time. Oh, it's cold outside? Oh, it's fine. I have a scarf. That's all I need, all right? Because my body's hot enough. But that's me and not him. And there was times he felt that he was just kind of being objectified and he didn't like it. And that's fair. Like, no judgment on him. Like, that's fair that he feels that way and he should be respected that way. But it's interesting that we could put him in a position where he can have his shirt off all the time. But if a lady wants, a nipple comes out for a lady, it's a huge deal. And that's what's so interesting. We all got nipples. We all got them. Some people got 3. So, I mean, it's just interesting to me that we pick and choose things like that to be censored and how our society is when it comes to what we deem inappropriate for just an everyday consumption. And that actually brings me to profanity, and that one's a big interesting thing for me. Anybody who knows me knows I kind of curse like a sailor, and it's not just to be vulgar, but it's just because that's just the way I talk. Those are words that I use because they're descriptive or they emphasize what I'm saying, just like anything else. It's interesting because they are just words, and I'm wondering who deemed them to be profanity or bad words, and especially what words we can and can't use, because over the years that's changed. I remember growing up where you could not hear bitch or shit on the radio. Couldn't. They always blanked it out. And I remember, I mean, I don't remember the exact time, but I remember one time I was driving in my car. I was definitely I think it was in high school. And I remember someone actually saying bitch on the radio and then someone saying shit on the radio. And I was like, wait, what? When did this start? When did they start saying this? Because I remember when they used to blank that out. So it's just interesting how these words now are okay to have, ass okay to have, but still words like the F word, which I guess this is my show. I can say fuck. The fuck word is interesting that's not consumable. One of my people that I watch all the time, Gary V, which love this guy. If you haven't checked him out, definitely check him out. Just good, savvy business guy, but also just smart as far as like social media and social dynamics and how people work and function, and just a very down-to-earth, genuine guy. But he's a lot like me, or I'm a lot like him, or just we're open and talking. I mean, one thing he said was, and this is him, where he's like, if a teacher calls me into the office because my kid said a bad word, but they're still doing great in school, I'm not worried about her saying a bad word, because what's important is her production and who she is as a person and the work that she's doing. I mean, ultimately, it's all about intent. And that's my big thing. It's all about the intent behind the words. The words themselves mean nothing without the intent. If you guys ever remember that old gum commercial where they were like, you lint liquor. They were saying all these words that sounded like bad words, but they weren't. But in that, you knew exactly what they meant because of the intent behind it. So technically, the words they were saying could be deemed as bad words because of the intent behind it. And that's what's crazy to me. Saying different words, but the same meaning behind it. And that's why I always say intent is the biggest thing that should be the deciding factor. And that's why comedy is getting hit now with censorship so bad. And it sucks because as a society, we've now built this culture that when we feel uncomfortable or if we're personally offended by something, then we feel like everyone should feel that way. And it's not the case, because prior to your own experiences, you may not have been offended by XYZ because it didn't affect you. But then once it personally affects you, then all of a sudden you're on edge. And I get it, man. There are some things that maybe shouldn't be joked about in certain moments, but I always had the idea that everything should be able to be joked about. And let me kind of clarify that. One of my very, very good friends, Robert Weathers, he was a good friend of mine from way back when I was still living in Virginia. And we used to crack up all kinds of jokes, man. Me and him together would crack everybody up. But he said one thing to me that always stayed with me. And he said, either all of it's funny or none of it's funny. And what he meant by that was once we start picking and choosing what can be funny and what can't, then we lose the whole sense of comedy, because then we start to get to a point of whose standards do we go by. What's funny to me is different than what's funny to someone else. And when we start to pick and choose, then whose morals do we go by? Whose values do we go by? And that's where we start to get into a slippery slope. Somebody who's maybe very religious might have different standards of what they deem funny than, say, somebody who's not, or somebody who's had a personal bad experience with XYZ might feel a certain way when jokes are said about XYZ. Now, that being said, there is a responsibility of when you're telling jokes to kind of know when the right place is to say it, when the right time. But at the same time, I see it's so tough. I've cracked jokes at funerals. I cracked jokes at my grandfather's funeral. I've cracked jokes even at my mom's, and that was literally the hardest day of my entire life. But I still found ways to kind of throw some jokes in there, and it wasn't just because I was making fun of the situation. It was just because that's how I deal with things. That's how I process. Is to try to find the light or the laughter within the dark times. And that's a thing. People don't understand. People who, comedians, people who are just funny in general. Comedians are some of the most depressed, most broken people in society. And that's part of the reason why they tell jokes. Robin Williams, one of my favorite comedians. I grew up, my childhood, I grew up with his characters and him, rest in peace. He dealt with so much that a lot of people didn't realize, and he wanted to make the world laugh so that people didn't feel the way he felt, and I resonate with that, man. I always loved making people laugh because it makes me feel good to make other people feel good. But there's a lot of broken stuff in here, and it's hard to deal with those things sometimes, and the way I deal with it is through laughter and through finding the light in situations. And sometimes I have a dark humor, like I'll make some messed up jokes, but I know the time and the place to do those. I know the people to do them with. And sometimes I'm not always right. Sometimes I'll make jokes and people just are like, That doesn't happen often because I'm hilarious, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes I make jokes in the wrong person. If they either catch it out of context or they weren't there for the whole thing or they don't know me personally, then sometimes it might not come off properly to them. And that happens, and I guess they won't like me, but whatever, But at the end of the day, you're not going to please everybody. You're not going to make everybody laugh. Even the most funny comedian ever is not going to make everybody laugh. So it all just depends. We can't start getting so offended and so sensitive about things that we can't enjoy laughter. And that's what's been so tough with that world, especially nowadays when everyone's kind of trying to cancel stuff now. They're going back years to dig up stuff just to say, well, this person said this time 10 years ago. And I'm like, bro, that's 10 years ago. One, it might have been funny then, honestly. Jokes that people said back in the 90s might not really swing today, but at that point in time and in that context, in that time period, it was funny. Or, you know what? Maybe it wasn't funny at all, but they changed as a person. I mean, everybody changed. Everybody's growth. I am not the same person I was fucking when I was 15 years old. I'm a completely different person. I've changed. I've grown. I've lived. I've experienced. And there's probably stupid stuff that I said back then. Shoot, there'll probably be stuff that I say right now that 10 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, what the heck was I thinking? It happens. People change. You have to judge people on the things that they do now, not what they used to do. I mean, and there are certain occasions where you need to look back and you need to watch habits and things of that nature. But generally speaking, you have to watch how people move and how people act in the present. People are always changing and evolving, but comedy is always changing and evolving too. So the topics, the subject matter, we can't censor that. We have to be able to allow people to have that creative ability. Now, that being said, some people just are terrible telling jokes. So they go to tell the jokes and it just is not funny. And so it makes it even worse if it's a kind of a sensitive subject matter. So be mindful of that. If you're going to tell jokes and they're going to be sensitive subject matter, make sure you run them by maybe some people you trust before you start saying stuff. Then they can tell you, buddy, I just don't think you're funny. So some people, like I said, they can't deliver it, or they just don't know the appropriate time, or it's the intent. Some jokes, again, the intent of what's behind it. Some people tell jokes to lighten the mood. Some people tell jokes to connect and relate. And some people tell them specifically to offend. And that's when I get how people can be like, whoa, hold on. And I've had to check people that I know, and they've told jokes and you could tell the intention behind it was to just be shitty. And you're like, that's not funny, man. Like, you're just being a dick. And so there's a balance between that. But again, it's timing. It's all delivery. There's elements of a joke that have to be implemented for it to be a funny joke. But ultimately, subject matter, I don't think should be censored. And again, let the critics judge based on the actual information or the actual joke itself. But it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Everyone's trying to cancel everything. But I mean, monitor things. I do like the idea that they put labels on stuff. When you had CDs, well, CDs when I was growing up would come out, and you'd have the albums and they do the parental advisory. I think that's dope to make sure, hey, this is not necessarily appropriate for kids. So you as a parent need to make sure that you guide that, or you have the ability to, at your own discretion, give that information to them or not. On movies, they have a rating for those movies, and those kind of things I think are legitimate. I think that's pretty smart and pretty responsible. But overall, our idea as a society of censoring things and what's good and what's bad in that world of things, as far as movies, TV, pictures, videos, comedy, artistic, creative ordeals, I think is a little skewed, in my opinion. But I don't know, man. Tell me what you guys think. Do you think censorship's too much? Do you think we need more? Do you think that we should kind of be free to do what we want? What do you guys think? Definitely throw some things down in the comments and let me know. But I appreciate you guys. I'm very thankful that at least I'm not really censored on this, so I get to kind of give you what I want and kind of talk who I am. So that's part of the freedom that I really do enjoy. That now that I started doing these videos, it's been really freeing for me to just be able to do what I want. And people who like it can connect with it, and people who don't, then they don't have to watch it. But just being able to connect with people who kind of on the same wavelength of things is pretty awesome. And to just be able to be myself and just put myself out there has been pretty cool too. It's just been really, really refreshing, and that's been great. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. We're just rocking and rolling. I'm actually setting up some new stuff for Fridays now, so it's gonna be some more work for me. So to help me out, please start sharing these videos, guys. It definitely helps me out when the more followers I get to be able to do more of this stuff, because I actually am gonna start bringing in some brand new stuff. Speaking of comedy, we'll do some funny things too. I know we've been talking about a lot of kind of more serious things with the real talk, which I think is good to actually talk about some real stuff. But we're gonna have some more, lighthearted things in here. I'm gonna start doing some foodie Fridays and having some guests and having some of my friends through who do different things. And yeah, man, I just really want to expand this and have a great time with it. So push that thumbs up button if you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. Share this with your friends or your enemies. I don't care. But you guys enjoy your weekend. Have some fun, man. The holidays are coming up, so be kind to each other, guys. And make sure you all remember that life's short. Make it epic. That's a wrap.